morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session on working remotely as part of our lovely Attitude Festival. So hopefully over the last couple of days, you've seen a number of sessions. You might have even unfortunately been on my session yesterday. So hopefully if you've come back, you've gained something from that session. Today we'll talk about working remotely. My name is Ollie McAfee. I head up our apprenticeships here at Cambridge, which covers Luton, Peterborough, Norwich, Ipswich and Cambridge itself. And I've got a fantastic member of my team, my right-hand person, Lottie, who's here to kind of keep me in check. She'll be looking at the chat box and probably interrupting me whenever she feels like it, in reality. Today's session is all about you guys, so please use the chat box. There's going to be too many of you to let you unmute, unfortunately, and have some chats. But please use the chat box. Please share your views, your ideas all the way through, because we've all experienced working remotely in some way, shape or form. I've got some very overarching ideas and views and opinions on it, but you will have different opinions. You'll have different experiences. So please, please, please share those all the way through the session. And it's always more fun if you disagree with me. So please, if you do, just let me know. Shout some bits out in the chat box. It's really, really important. So we will crack on. And I think the main thing to say about working remotely is we have all experienced it. You know, there's undoubtedly we've all experienced it in some way, shape or form over the last few months, whether it's at school, whether it's at work, whether it's obviously just being stuck at home and socializing remotely. It's still the same sort of idea behind it. So today's session, I want to talk about the challenges of working from home. And again, we experience these from so many different perspectives, so many different scenarios, that any views and opinions you have are really, really important. I'm going to talk about a couple of the business benefits to working remotely, some of the personal benefits as well, a couple of my tips for working remotely. Lottie and I talk about this regularly, so it's one that we are continually talking about. I'm going to talk about my rules for using the telephone as well, actually, because something that I am going back to is getting off Zoom for those 5-10 minute phone calls and chucking them on a mobile so I can walk around and be a bit more engaged with other things as well. And I've got some tips for healthy remote working, something I have certainly embraced over the last 14-15 months or so. As always, please use the chat, any questions, share any experiences, views, opinions. So, some of the challenges of working remotely from a business perspective. So I'm thinking from my perspective as an employer with my team, looking at that and thinking about those challenges. And some of those things include potentially not being able to build a team ethos, a team ethic, a team community potentially. Some people lacking and finding it difficult to engage in terms of communication. We within our own team, Lottie, I think you'll agree, we have the majority of people fully on board with all the different stuff we do, but some people do find certain processes difficult, whether it's one of our messaging services, whether it's Zoom calls and not being able to get involved unless they're actually suggested to. So you have to think about how you communicate and setting really, really clear goals. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on. There was always an idea prior to COVID that working remotely would cause you to lose staff, and the staff you do have are potentially less reliable. I think that myth has just been destroyed over the last 15 months. If anything, I think now it's the reverse. If you don't offer some form of hybrid working, or you don't support, you know, flexible working, you know, support with childcare, all of that stuff, I think you're then going to lose people. And I think people maybe won't be as motivated and might not be as engaged potentially. But each business and each scenario is different. You know, if your job is to manufacturing engineering products, you're going to have to be in a factory. There's no doubt about that. But if you're in a different environment where you can have hybrid working, split with remote working and office working, there is that real potential to build a great model for people. Again, another myth, I suppose, to an extent, was this idea that being within a remote working environment, it would be harder to manage people. I personally find it so much easier managing remotely. I can jump on calls regularly with people, I can support them, I can share screen with them. I don't have any of that awkward, right, I'll meet you at this service station at 10:15 while I'm going on to my next meeting, and you can have me for 20 minutes, and then traffic means we don't have that. You know, Zoom, the share screen function, all of those messaging techniques have absolutely revolutionized, I think, our working. And I think it has across the board, because we're no longer tied to being a physical people one-to-one working together. And I think that's something we've seen a huge increase in productivity, which counteracts my next point. You know, this idea of losing productivity, it doesn't really exist in my mind anymore. Yes, in some instances, yes, some staff, some circumstances have maybe not been as productive, but there's ways around it, there's support mechanisms. And I think that's another myth potentially that we've got. The one I would say that still exists and we're always working on is that idea that security concerns, you know, you don't know who someone's living with, who's visiting someone's house, you don't know if they're locking their computer down correctly or any personal documentation. But for me, one of the overarching challenges for businesses of working remotely is this idea that we have to trust staff, you know, and that is probably the biggest hurdle of actually, do we trust people to be working their hours? Do we trust people to be doing the job? If the answer is no, that's a wider potential business issue. And again, over the last 15 months, I think all of those kind of myths or concerns have hopefully been removed from the mindset. And now it's about how do we build a hybrid remote working model with some office work, which is exactly the conversations we're having at FI at the moment. Then there are some challenges, let's be honest, to working from home. For those of you who have experienced it, whether it's been school, work, you know, just trying to socialise, there are a few. I'm not going to talk about all of these ones, but there's a couple that I really think for you guys, particularly if you're going into roles in the next few months, you're about to leave school, you've done your A-levels, your GCSEs, you're about to go into hopefully an apprenticeship or whatever other opportunity it's going to be. There's a couple of really, really key ones. The first one is you should still dress appropriately. And I cannot stress this enough, and it does wind me up and I do comment on it. But if I'm having meetings with senior members of other businesses and they're wearing football shirts or they're in their dressing gowns, God forbid, or their pajamas or whatever it is, I don't enjoy that interaction because you feel like you're getting into someone's more personal element, which can be massively beneficial. However, for me, you should still dress appropriately. And it should be maybe not suit, tie, all of that stuff, unless you need to, depends on what the situation is, but a shirt, put a watch on, put a piece of jewellery on. We were talking about earrings and watches this morning, ironically enough, because it gets you into that mindset of working. If you're not lucky enough to have a study where you can lock yourself away, barricade it, stop the little one coming in, then dressing makes you feel more like you're working. If you're working at your dining room table and you're dressed appropriately, at least you feel in that work ethos. And that's really, really, really something that I would stress to everyone. If you are going to be going into a role where you're a bit officey, but you're a bit at home, dress, maybe not super, super smart, but do dress as if you're ready for work. It sets you up mentally for the right way of going for things. And it lets people see that as well. You know, if Lottie turned up with a dirty t-shirt on, I'd be going, oh my God, what are you doing? What's wrong? Are you all right? What's coming up with the world? And for me, it's that bit of, it automatically creates a kind of ethos that you want to work towards. So really, really important there for me, that one. And the easy one to say and the most impossible one to do, let's be honest, is remove those distractions. You know, if you, like me, have had a little one around the whole time, or dogs, cats, animals, or you live in a house with, you know, loads of other people, you know, removing those distractions is almost impossible. But it's trying to set yourself up as best you can and make that effort when you're working remotely to make sure you're not getting parcels delivered if you can help it. If you are getting food delivered, make sure it's at a suitable time and you're not in a meeting or whatever it is. So really, you've got to almost plan your day as much as possible when you're working remotely, even more so maybe than if you're in the office to an extent. Any thoughts, any views, any opinions, any experiences that you've had, please use the chat box. Let me know. If there's any on there that you want me to expand on, please let me know as well. those are the challenges. We've got the workplace challenges, we've got the personal challenges, but I think remote working has so many benefits. It's something that I've been stressing internally within the business to my team, and I think, you know, all of those are massively key benefits to people. You know, you've got the improved productivity. I am so much more effective working from home because I don't get caught up in conversations. I don't get asked that, can I have 2 minutes at the moment, when I'm actually in the middle of a report. And case in point, yesterday I went to the office, and was I as productive as I normally am working from home? No, I was not, because we were chatting, we were engaging, and we were doing our wish list. Oh, let's go do that, let's sort that, let's make sure we're doing all that stuff that sometimes doesn't get caught up from that working remotely element to it. Big one for me is that reduced commuting time and, you know, helping the environment. Let's be honest, we were all travelling. I was doing at least 2 hours, mostly 4 hours, depending on Cambridge lovely traffic. And that's just not good for anyone. It's wasted time, it's more stress, and it doesn't help people. So limiting that and having that time at home to be productive in other ways really is beneficial. And I think the better use of technology is a really key benefit for us all, because actually we've all come on leaps and bounds. You know, systems like Zoom, systems like Slack or messaging service or Teams, whatever it is, all of these things have actually made us more effective, not only when we work remotely, but when we're back in the office. Those things are really going to kick on and still make us effective working practices going forward. So it's really important to keep those up. You know, something again that I'm stressing at the moment is I don't want to lose all the great stuff we do at the moment. Again, any views, any ideas, opinions? Lottie, I know you've got a number of views on this one as well.
Of course. We've had a couple of people contributing. So Sam's saying, when people know you work from home, they want to kind of visit or talk to you. They almost see it as an opportunity that you're not actually working. Which is true.
Yeah, but then you just be very rude and very blunt about it. If you're like me, leave me alone. No, put a sign up. And I think that's something that, you know, again, it is easy for people to come and get distraction and maybe bring you lunch, and then you have a half an hour conversation or whatever it is. But it's about trying to limit that, because work is absolutely, you know, one of our key things. We spend the most time at work, let's be honest. So making sure you put that process in place to stop people maybe doing that is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And thinking about distractions, Karen said there's less distractions at home, so it's far more effective than when in the office. I'm exactly the same. I know you are as well, Ollie. But going to the office, I think, like Ollie said yesterday, Ollie and I went into the office to say hello, and was I as productive as I would have been if I was at home? Absolutely not. But going to the office does have benefits too. So
by the time you've done the 6 Costa runs, the 2 lunch runs, plus the snacks, your day's basically gone.
Exactly.
And I think, you know, those elements are really important. We're not knocking those things. You know, the social element, the engagement is massively important. But a mix, a hybrid working model, even though I'm not a fan of hybrid as a term, but I do think that sort of approach will really help people, really benefit people.
Definitely. And Frances is just talking about the commute, is saying actually she misses it because it was a nice walk to get there. So actually you're missing that kind of morning time, which is true, isn't it? You know, you have to fend off the A14, so it's slightly different for you, but for individuals who are walking, or it's that time to kind of reflect on the day or get yourself ready for the day, it actually could be missed, couldn't it, from working at home?
Totally agree, but then set that routine. Why aren't you still going for that walk before you start work? Why aren't you doing the same get dressed, get going mentality, having breakfast? You know, and that is one of the things I come on to later, is setting that routine. But if you're lucky enough to have a lovely walk, yeah, really, that's fantastic. But for others, it's potentially difficult. I know someone in the team got the train yesterday to the office, and that was not the most enjoyable experience for them. And again, you know, I think it's opportunities and experiences and what our situations are very different. So some of our top tips. Now, again, these aren't going to work for all of you, so you're going to just go, no, I can't do that, whatever it is, but some really will work. If you want me to expand on any in particular, please let me know, please shout out. I'm going to pick on a couple to start with. The first one is be positive. Now, I know within my team, there's certain individuals that if I talk to them, I get very positive, get very excited talking to them, and it's, you know, an interesting conversation on occasion. They're the people that aren't going to go, oh, well, I didn't really do anything last night. I sat in front of the TV, I unpacked a box of stuff, whatever it is. You know, the people I talk to, particularly early in the morning, are those people who are going to say, yeah, I did this, it's great, we went out for a long walk, we then decided to build an extension just out of nowhere, whatever it is, all of these things really, really help that positivity piece for me. So I really pick who I'm talking to, and I try to make sure I'm as positive as I possibly can be, though it doesn't always come across potentially. Lottie might agree with that one. And the other one I really want to say is have a plan B. You know, I get very frustrated within my team when they say, oh, my internet's been down for an hour. Well, what is your backup plan? Are you hotspotting? Are you going to, if you're legally allowed to, a family member's house? Are you popping to the coffee shop to pick up the Wi-Fi? What is your backup plan? And I would stress to everyone, have a plan B. You know, absolutely essential that if your internet's going to go down, it happened to us here last night, down for 3 hours. If that was in a working day, I'd be straight in the car, down to a friend's house, or down to the coffee shop more likely, because I don't really like other people, let's be honest. So I'd definitely go to the coffee shop with my headphones in. But have that plan B and be ready to go. Don't take hours then having to pack everything up. Get it ready to go, get sorted as quickly as you can. Any that anyone would like me to expand on? Any of those where you go, oh, what do you mean by that? Or any of your own ideas? And Lottie, is there any you wanted to talk about on there?
Sorry, I had a laptop malfunction then. A few people have come in with some other kind of thoughts. Anastasia is saying some people are more introverts who actually would rather enjoy working at home, and others actually thrive off that interaction in the office. And it's so true, you know, talking about going back to the office, there's some individuals who are very, very strong-minded on, I need to get back in the office, and some people would quite happily not return. So totally agree with that point there. Lydia's come in with probably another distraction, which is that kind of non-work chit chat throughout the day, and the kind of 2 minutes can easily lead into half an hour and it's gone. Amelia has said, I feel that since working from home, I'm more active, so going for walks during lunchtime and after work, and saving on childcare, as you can just nip away and pick up your son from school, which is fantastic. We've definitely seen kind of how that's worked well if you do have little ones. I know you yourself, Ollie, have a little boy, so it's kind of helpful to work at home. And yeah, like you say, it's kind of work-life balance, isn't it? It's at 5 o'clock or whatever time you finish work or school or whatever it is, you're back there and you can have your evening. So yeah, totally agree with that one. And Michael, it's good to have a good mobile plan that allows a lot of data to which you can tether, which I also agree with. We've all been caught out, haven't we, where we're just about to go into a meeting, our Wi-Fi goes down and you panic. So yeah, I always make sure I have a good amount of data on the phone as backup.
Fabulous. The last one then I'm going to pick up on is have a to-do list. And I can't stress this enough. And I did yesterday. Anyone who was on the session yesterday, we talked about the to-do list. Lottie's will be to hand, mine's to hand. Plus, we have our Outlook calendars. But for working remotely, I think it's absolutely essential, even more so potentially than normal, to have a really clear to-do list, because you can get caught up in things. You can get caught up in those emails coming in. You can get caught up in distracting phone calls, Zooms, you know, especially ones where you then end up pulling other people on because you're talking about wider things. That 2 minutes on Zoom can turn into 5 hours potentially. So again, have that to-do list and make a really, really clear plan. I'm not saying that it has to be a written to-do list, but it does sometimes make sense, and it is nice to sometimes tick things off potentially. So if you're going to have a to-do list, this is a really, really simple approach. Have a bit of white paper, make a list of everything you have to do. Some people do it 1 to 10, some people color code, some people do boxes, whatever works for you to highlight what's important, what's the priority, what needs doing. I personally love to do a massive cross through mine and make mine really messy when I've done it. But whatever works for you, just making sure that you've got a list together so you know if you start at 7:30 in the morning or 9 o'clock, whatever it is, this is what I've got to do. I like to break it down into actual segments of, right, I need to do my emails at this time because otherwise I won't get to them. I then know I've got 3 meetings, but I need to make sure that I actually answer the actions from those meetings. So I'm really obsessed with planning my day in. And it leads on nicely from that time management session yesterday. As always, any hints and tips, anything you use? I mean, we got a number of comments yesterday about different systems, different apps and things like that people are using, so please share those in the chat box. But if you don't have a to-do list, please start in whatever form it is. Please get a to-do list together, even if it's at home. I wind my missus up no end by saying, right, what are we going to do today? Let's create a little list. And then we get it all done. If we don't, we just end up wasting the entire day. So it's really, really important for me to have a to-do list all the time. Online meetings. I love an online meeting, but I also hate an online meeting. So it's an interesting one on occasions, online meetings. And the reason I sometimes hate them is they're not effective, you know, particularly when you are doing a planning piece, maybe you've got 20 people on, you're all sharing lovely ideas. Actually, you've got probably 4 people who are actually talking and everyone else is sitting there doing emails, Slack, answering their phone, running to get parcels, or just eating with the camera off. You know, whatever's going on, some meetings aren't as effective. And we as individuals have to control that to an extent. So the first thing is we should be embracing video calling, and by video calling I mean turning cameras on. You know, I hate having a meeting where people have their camera off and they are obviously not doing stuff. They're not engaging, they're not listening, not participating. You can either hear them wandering around the house, you know, making tea or whatever it is. So have that video on. Have that as that social interaction so that you can see the people, you can see the facial expressions, you can see the way they're sitting, their posture, all of that stuff. I'm personally a big advocate of using headphones with an earphone attached because you block out some of the background noise and the sound is a lot crisper and a lot clearer. So something I would do is invest £5 in a decent pair of headphones. Amazon, there are other shops obviously available out there, but I don't really know any others. They will be able to send you a nice pair which work really well, and it makes so much difference. The background noise is fantastic and it makes it clearer for everyone, and you can also cut out those distractions. Difficult one, speak clearly and steadily. We all get excited on occasion, and sometimes, you know, particularly on video calls with streaming, it sometimes all gets caught up. So try and speak as clearly and steadily as possible. And then establish etiquette. Now, I'm a big one for saying, well, I'm talking, and Lottie knows this, I'm talking, then you shouldn't be talking unless it's a pause or you're ready to go, all of that stuff. And for me, that's really important, even more so in online meetings, because otherwise people aren't going to be able to share their views. So we use a lot of reactions, we use name drops. You know, I love saying, you know, Lottie, what do you think about that? John, what do you think about that? Paul, what do you think about that? And letting people have that moment to speak is really important. Something that doesn't happen enough is people don't repeat the blooming question. They really don't. You know, they'll say, so what do you think about that? And then the Wi-Fi skipped out and then everyone's sitting there going, what did they say? Did you hear them? I didn't hear them. Are they still there? And you spend about 5 minutes working out what the question was. So sometimes just actually go, hold on, what was the question? Let's go back to it. Something that you should have the confidence to do. And my final really important piece of advice is invite the right people to online meetings. Please don't invite everyone in the whole world. Same as my bugbear with emails is I'm CC'd into hundreds of emails a day. And I don't need to see any of them, probably, in reality. I could probably delete them all, and my life is not going to change in any way, shape or form, and I'm probably not going to miss anything. But that idea of, if you're on a meeting, who do you actually need? What are the actions? What's the purpose? Making sure you set those ground rules along with those etiquette guides is really important. There's another whole slide about bits and pieces on this. I'm not going to go into it at all. Most of it's pretty clear, most of it's pretty common sense, but it's all about practice. And if you're about to go into the workplace, you're about to start an apprenticeship, whatever exciting thing that might be coming in the near future, I would suggest you practice online meetings at the moment. I know it's a bit weird, I know it sounds a bit silly, but actually you may have done loads and loads of Zooms and things like that with friends and family. They're very, very different. I would be trying to do as many Zooms as you can, jump on as many sessions like this so that you can get used to that way of engaging online. It's really, really, really important. If there's any on there that you'd like me to expand on, please let me know. Lottie, not sure if there's anything you want to chat on, those lovely top tips?
No, not at all. I think we've all been in meetings, haven't we, over the past year where someone's been on mute or something like that. You're on mute. But yeah, I think the biggest one for me is the video, the camera. So, you know, I have regular meetings with a lot of students. And there's nothing worse than me being on camera trying to talk to them and all they see is a black screen. So it's nice, you feel like it's more engaging. And I think that's something we miss from remote meetings. So if you can and you're brave enough, I think in these it's really important to switch your camera on and engage where you can. But yeah, totally agree.
Fabulous. And the other thing, the only other one I'm going to pick up on there is that kind of names and context. You know, it's really important that when you go onto Zoom, just because my name's written at the bottom doesn't mean you know everything in the world. So it's really, really important to actually say, hi, I'm Lottie, I'm from First Intuition, this is what I do. You know, that 5-minute intro can become really, really important to those meetings because then you know who to go to. You know, if you're talking about coaching and you want information about what a coach does, there's no point asking me. Ask Lottie, and that's where we can build that rapport really, really quickly by having some really nice introductions. So those are kind of our tips. They work. I mean, loads of organisations have their own rules now, so make sure you look at those things. And there's hundreds of thousands of guides online, but I've tried to keep it as simple as possible. As I said earlier, one thing I'm reverting back to is the old school telephone. Not an actual telephone, it is a mobile phone. I'm not going that old school yet. But I think where we went remote, the phone almost just got dumped. I actually had weeks where I hadn't used my phone for a work purpose at all because you just didn't need it. Everything was on Zoom, everything was on calls via the computer, all of that stuff. And I actually think it's really important we remember how to go back to using the telephone. You know, for those of you who are just leaving school, going into your first job, the telephone may seem like quite a scary thing. You know, you might not be used to it. You might not be used to answering client calls and things like that. And it's really, really important to get used to it. So I would be, again, sounds silly, but practice. There's nothing worse than someone who comes brand new into the organisation who says, I'm not really used to answering the phone. Okay, that's fine. I'll show you how to do it. But then that nervousness, you can't get it wrong. You really can't get it wrong. So please practice with the phone. Couple of mine, and these aren't always the most practical, I appreciate, but always stand when making a call. For me, my tone of voice, the way I'm sounding, the enthusiasm is very, very different if I'm standing or sitting. And it comes across massively. So if you are that way inclined, standing while making a call can change your tone and can give you a bit more authority in your voice potentially because you feel naturally slightly different. A big one that I am pushing massively is what's the point of everything in reality? Now that can get really, really big in terms of questions about life and things like that. But in terms of meetings, what is the point? What is our goal? What do we want to achieve? You know, what is our upfront contract? What is it that we want to get out of this today? And for me, that's a massive one, of starting a call with, hi, want to chat to you about this. Do you have time? And I want to get this done. Get it out there so everyone knows, because there's nothing worse than you going into a meeting or a phone call where you think it's going to be half an hour and the guy goes after 2 minutes, well, I've only got 2 more minutes, and you haven't covered your core elements to it. So setting that up for a contract and working out how long they've got is really, really important. I like to have different things on my desk because I like to fidget or move around. So actually having a fidget toy, a desk toy, whatever, really, really helps me. and it allows you to focus on that telephone call, because otherwise you're just holding a mobile, you're using headphones, and you can easily get distracted to go onto your email, to go onto Slack. And again, you can always tell when someone's not fully engaging with a phone call, so it's definitely worth making sure you have something that distracts you in a positive, focused way. And something I do that really annoys people, but I do think it works most of the time, is phone people just before lunchtime. You are going, if you want something quick answered, phone them just before lunch, because they absolutely want to get out the door. That's life, and that's human nature, and that is just a trick that I like to use when I want a quick answer and I don't want to get involved in lots of conversations. I will literally phone Lottie and say, I know you've got lunch in 2 minutes, can I just answer this? Bye. And it works, and it's such a nice little technique, more for internal comms, I would say, than external in some cases, unless it's car salesmen and people like that, and then please crack on with that. It works really, really well. Any thoughts on the telephone? Any thoughts or ideas or any concerns? Please use the chat box, let us know. Anything on the phone, Lottie? I know I've started to do it a lot more.
No, I think when I first started using the phone, I used to get so anxious about the phone ringing and picking it up and wondering what the person's going to ask me or anything like that. But I think I have these conversations with students quite a lot, and it tends to be the sticking point for a lot of people is having the phone calls with clients and other members of staff. But I think the thing to remember is with knowledge comes confidence. So as you kind of are in a role for a longer period of time, you gain a lot more knowledge and therefore feel more comfortable answering questions and having those conversations. And I think the other thing is if you don't know, don't be afraid to say, actually, I'm not sure on that, can I come back to you? I think we kind of get stuck in a bit of a place where we feel like we need to know everything, and you absolutely don't. And there's nothing wrong with asking them if you can return the call at a later date, later time. But yeah, I think it's definitely something which, as time goes on, becomes a lot easier.
Totally agree. So, something I have certainly embraced over the last 15 months, because I'm not spending hours commuting or going to the bakery in the morning and then to a lovely Chinese for lunch and all of those lovely things, is healthy working remotely. And I think the tips for this is going to be really, really important. Well, when we have that hybrid working, or if you're back in the office with a bit of remote working, making sure it still works. But the first stuff I want to talk about is that communication, that foster relationships piece. I can't stress enough, whether it's office working, remote working, take the time to ask people about themselves. How are you? No, I am the world's worst for this and the most unsociable person in the world, but even I will say, how are you? How's the little one? How's the dog? How's the cat? Whatever it is, just to build that rapport. It's something that's so, so important. And it shouldn't just be a manager, director, an owner, or a team leader doing it. As individuals, you should be asking questions as well. Now, I will have no issue spending 5 minutes talking about my little boy, because he's the most amazing person in the whole world. And there is no other boy in the world who can compete with him ever, regardless of anything. But I will always talk about this stuff. Whereas without that breakdown, you don't understand people's mentality. Without knowing a little bit about them, you don't understand how they work, potentially. So foster those relationships, really, really, really build that opportunity and rapport. And the biggest one that I know we struggled with as a team was during first lockdown, is that getting out of the house, whether it's the garden, whether it's going for what were we allowed back then, an hour's exercise a day, or whatever the rules were. It's crazy to think about that stuff now. But actually get out of the office, whether it's your little office, you're lucky like me, you've got to study, or you're working in a dining room, but get out of that area. And I think the same applies now, even with hybrid working, even in the office again. Please, please, please take the time to, if you've got your lunch break, don't eat at your desk, because not only is it actually making a mess everywhere, let's be honest, but you're not going to get that break, you're not getting that refresh that you really, really need. So make sure you do those things. It's really, really important. And then for me, it sort of leads on to some different bits in terms of working remotely and that kind of healthy bit. I mean, the first thing that we talk about a lot is offering support to people. You know, again, this doesn't just have to be managers, directors, owners, all of that stuff, or business leaders. You know, just asking someone, are you all right, particularly in, you know, those lockdown situations that we had, was really, really important. I remember having a call with a couple of them and actually having to ask, do you have loo roll? Something I never in the world thought I'd ever have to ask a member of the team. But those are the questions we had, and the barriers that were broken down between groups and teams was really, really, really important. So actually make sure you ask people, are you all right? Or maybe say something positive to someone who you haven't spoken to in a while. Just say, are you all right? You're looking great. You know, be careful with that stuff, because people can take that very wrong. But that idea of, great, oh, those curtains behind you look amazing, Lottie. Where are they from? You know, all of those little conversations are really, really important. And even more so potentially when we're working remotely. The only other two I really want to talk about in here are, if you are ill, just take your sick day. I struggle with this because I don't like taking days off, and I don't like showing weakness potentially for being ill. But I am not effective. If I'm coughing, spluttering, or running a temperature, or whatever it is, a Zoom meeting is probably the worst forum for that than there can be. So actually just take that time off. If you're unwell, take the time off, work it back later, whatever it is. But actually, if you've got a migraine, the worst thing you can do is just sit on Zoom. So actually turn and say, look, I'm not feeling great, I'll catch this up later. Can we rearrange? And don't be scared. I'd much rather have that than someone who then goes, oh, I've got a bit of headache, so I'm going to turn the camera off. I'd much rather I'd have been told before, no worries, let's rearrange, let's do that. And the final one really feeds onto that one I said earlier about talking to those positive people potentially, but it really is important to talk to the right people. There's no point having negative conversations with people where they can't change things. You know, if you're struggling with a system, a computer, a laptop, or a piece of work, or a client, or a colleague, you need to talk to the right person. You know, the same as pick those people who are really, really positive to talk to, if that's what you need, and that's what you like to do. The same is, if you've got a problem, talk to the right person. You know, I think one of the things that remote working can allow is a little bit of gossiping potentially, and it may not always be positive. So I think it's making sure you talk to the right people. If you've got a problem, express it in the right way, but express it to the right people as well. Any thoughts, any views, opinions, use the chat box, anything coming through, Lottie?
Michael was saying about the kind of standing up when having a phone call, that you can't always stand up, but actually when you do, it's that, like, what do they call it, power stance, isn't it?
Yeah. So
to give yourself a bit more command, a bit more power, and I totally agree with that. I know you stand up to deliver a lot of sessions as well, don't you? Because you're in a different frame of mind, aren't you, sometimes, when you're stood up. So totally agree.
Far too excited when I stand.
Yeah.
So I'll be dancing around, which is what I'm trying to sit today, to be calm.
Yeah. Another thing I did during one of the lockdowns was I was working downstairs at the dining room table, because I'm not fortunate enough, like Ollie, to have a study at home. And what I would do is I wanted to make sure I differentiated between work time and home time. And one thing for me was I had to just remove the laptop and everything off the table, because every time I walked to the kitchen past the dining room, I'd just be faced with looking at everything from work, and it kind of consumes your life. So if you have the possibility to put your stuff away at the end of the day, or, you know, some people are working in their bedrooms and stuff, I'd really, really encourage you to, you know, I know it would take 5 minutes at the end of the day to unplug everything and put it away, but it really does help, I think, mentally. But yeah, I think, does anyone else have any tips to share, what you found over the past year now? Yeah, just over a year. Anyone who's working at home, do share any ideas.
The one we always miss is work outside. Obviously, we had lovely weather last year, not so good this year, but we were lucky enough to spend hours outside, I think, working and doing team calls and things like that, which made a huge, huge difference to everyone. You know, everyone was very excited about that. Use the chat box, let us know any ideas, anything that you think you want me to expand on, please let me know. And we're almost there with today's session. I've talked about a couple of the benefits of working remotely. I've hopefully dispelled some of the myths that still exist potentially. I don't think they do, not in the same way they possibly did 15 months ago or so. I've shown a few tips for working remotely, but this is very much about you as individuals. But what you can take from this as something that will hit everyone is that positivity. Ask the questions, ask the right people, and use the correct tools. Don't be shy in asking questions at all. And that's something that, whether you're going into the workplace for the first time, whether you're someone who's looking at a career change, whether you're one of our fantastic DL apprentices or students or whatever else is going on out there, asking questions gets you places, and it's really, really important to do that. If you don't ask questions, you're then not going to know what comes after that potentially. And I think it's really, really important all the way through to ask those questions, whether it's remote, whether it's physical, no matter what. I've shared some of our tips for telephones and remote meetings and online meetings and face-to-face meetings, even in certain cases. Those will all work. But it's about what works for you as individuals. You will have certain members of your team who do things very, very differently. So make sure you engage with them and ask them questions again. It comes back to that. If someone doesn't put their camera on, potentially just ask why. And then they'll probably say, well, actually behind me there's a load of building work going on and there's builders walking backwards and forwards, or whatever it is going on. There's probably a nice explanation which can lead into a really nice conversation. And I think the main thing is, when we're working from home, it's about that healthy element to it. Not only, going out for walks and things like that, but make sure you set your desk up appropriately. I know a couple of our team at FI have struggled with back pain over the last 15 months because they didn't get the right chair or they didn't set up correctly. So it's making sure that you do all of these things and take regular breaks, as well as those other things from getting out. Use your commute time to go for that walk potentially, or as we're at home, eat a different diet potentially than what we have previously. All of those options are there, and give you lots of options for improving your health as well, both mentally and physically. That is absolutely everything I wanted to cover today. Hopefully there's something within the session that you thought, yeah, brilliant, or even more so, no, I already do that, I'm amazing at that, which is fantastic as well. As always, thank you very much for joining us. Loads of sessions on over the course of the rest of the week. We've got another one of these sessions tomorrow as well. I think it's on confidence and things like that in the workplace, so one of my favourite topics, but you'll find all of these are actually my favourite topic.